Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, world. Welcome once again to Tuesday Talk with Key West Lou. I am your host, Louis Patrone. Well, it's an exciting week again, but this is an exciting evening. The GOP, the Republican debates are on television. I just watched the first group, the second team, the four lowest candidates, popularity-wise thus far in the polls. And I watched a brief introduction here while I was waiting for this show to come on of the prime game, so to speak. And let me make the following three comments. This has nothing to do with being a Democrat or a Republican. It has to do with the quality of what I watched tonight, because these Republican candidates have made such a big deal out of this show that it's not fair to them, et cetera, et cetera. I just feel compelled to make the comments. One, I thought I was at a baseball game. They started with the Star-Spangled Banner. Everything's scripted here, by the way. And each candidate standing there with his right hand over his heart. All fine. Nothing wrong with the Star-Spangled Banner. Good thing to do, but to me it didn't fit. I'm sorry, it didn't fit. You can say it fits anywhere. It didn't fit in this show tonight. Number two, this show is not on Fox, which in southern Florida, where I live here, in Key West, that would be Channel 32, Comcast 32. I was 8 minutes into the show. The show was 8 minutes into itself before I could find it. I could find it nowhere. It was not on 32. And then all of a sudden they said, oh, if you want to watch it, by the way, this is 8 minutes into the show, 8:08. It's on Fox Business Channel 106. I'm a bit ignorant. I've never watched Fox Business Channel 106, so I had to go find that. And they're using it for advertising purposes, Fox, to introduce people to Fox Business Channel. I didn't think that was appropriate, that I had to miss, in effect, the first 10 minutes of the show. The other thing is, and I'm probably wrong here, and I'm going to be severely criticized for it, but I've got to say it. The show was too smooth. The questions are very complex. You've got 3 to 5 different questions, in effect, tied into each one. I'd say 4 or 5. And the responses, everything's perfect. It's greased lightning. I mean, they remember the questions, they respond to the questions, the candidates, and it's kumbaya. Everybody's happy here. It's a great show. If I didn't know better, and maybe I do, I'd say this show is sort of rigged. They had the questions in advance and knew what the answers had to be. It sounds like that, what was it, $64,000 question or something. I'm not impressed. In fact, right now, what time is it? It's 9:05, and the first question or the first thing is being asked. They're introducing the candidates now, 5 minutes into the show. Okay, having said all that, what do I want to talk about this week? Jeremy Mardis, sad situation, 6-year-old boy, seated in the front passenger seat, buckled into a car seat, buckled in, with his stepfather. Somehow there was a conflict with 2 police officers. 4 were actually there, but 2 seemed to participate, and 18 bullets were shot into the car. Little Jeremy, 6 years old, took 5 of the shots into his body, 1 in his head, 4 into his chest, and died immediately. His father was shot in the head and is still in critical condition in the hospital. No one seems to know yet why the car was being pulled over by the police. Apparently there was a chase. No one is certain. There was no warrant out for the father. There's some talk tonight on TV that one of the police officers had a problem or was not happy with the father. They had a dispute in the past. I don't know. The witness statements, they're saying, are in conflict all of a sudden. They're confusing. The problem here is, and by the way, the district attorney recused himself. His office is not going to prosecute because he's the father of one of the police officers. Not an easy situation here. And by the way, the two police officers who did the shooting have been thrown off the force and have been charged with murder. The problem. The judge is going to screw this up, I'm afraid. The judge has issued a gag order on the case. You got two police officers in jail, a 6-year-old boy dead, and the father in the hospital. He's issued a gag order, which means no one can talk about it. The police can't offer any details. The prosecutor's office can't. It's going to be the state now. Defense attorneys can't. No one can talk about this thing. That's not the way you run a criminal proceeding. That's not the way it's supposed to be done. That is not the way it is done. It's amazing in these police shooting cases, whether black or white, they seem to get screwed up from the beginning. Everything is done differently than normal, okay? We used to have, before the Magna Carta, there was something called a star chamber proceeding, where, the king says, you're guilty of a crime. You committed this crime. They had a trial, but the public wasn't invited. You were lucky if you got defense counsel, and you were automatically guilty, and then you were taken out and hung. Well, the Magna Carta and then our Bill of Rights says, hey, man, can't do this. We're not going to have a star chamber proceeding. Those words aren't in the Constitution, of course, but you're going to have a public trial, open proceeding. We're not having this here. And though the Constitution doesn't say it, over the years the cases have concluded the public has a right to know. Transparency is required, no question about it. Where's the transparency here? We don't know what's going on. And they shouldn't hold this thing up like this for a week or 2 weeks. I don't want to hear this. We're going to hear horse shit, I'm going to tell you right now. Act to protect the defendant's rights. This is done all over the country. They do it the right way. Everything's open, above board. You don't gag anybody. You don't do any of this stuff. So that's what bothers me, and that's what worries me. We should all be in there from moment one so we know exactly what happened in this situation. Okay, let's go to food costs. We all shop, and I shop at Publix down here in Key West. And I want to tell you something. I complain occasionally on this show. I complain frequently in the blog I write every morning, Key West Lou, that food's getting expensive. Over the past several years, the cost of food seems to go up every year. And I'm of the opinion that it's gone up about 20% in the last 5 years, okay? At least 20%, maybe 30%. All I know is what cost me X number of dollars 5 years ago cost me a third more today. That being the case, I read an article yesterday. A new study came out, and they said that the cost of food has soared, the greatest soaring ever. It went up the most in a certain period of time, and it's the last 3 years they were looking at. It's the cost of food has soared for 3 years. The only problem is they say it only went up 3.9%. I don't believe 3.9%. You shop, I shop. I don't believe 3.9%. I'd be happy if it was only 3.9%. The interesting thing, though, and first time I've seen this, and it makes sense to me, the reason why the cost of food has soared, the reason why the cost of food has gone up, blamed on El Nino. Interesting. El Nino is responsible, and the reason is wherever El Nino is, it still has an effect on the other side of the earth, apparently, or in other places, and they're saying there's either too much water because of El Nino or there's not enough water because of El Nino, and as a result of either of those items, food crops have and are suffering. Quentin Tarantino, he's a Hollywood filmmaker, makes some big films, controversial films. He likes to challenge whatever's going on. He thinks and he may, I don't know. He's creating an expose of something that is occurring in America. He's into police shootings now, okay? Police shootings. He said recently that there are more deaths. The movie hasn't come out yet. I don't even know what the name of the movie is. I can't recall it. I apologize. But he said, I recall this definitely, that some of the deaths where a person is in police custody or is about to be placed in police custody are murders. You got to agree with that statement. Some of them, he doesn't say all of them. Whether black or white in material, some of them do seem to be murders. Something's out of whack today with our police departments. In any event, the executive director of the National Fraternity Order of Police, National Fraternity Order of Police, Jim Pasco, says, hey, man, you're wrong. And he's attacking the cops, he says, in effect. And we're telling the whole world, because people listen to us, he thinks, not to watch the film. Avoid the movie when it comes out. It's coming out sometime, I think, early in December. And he said the other thing is, Mr. Tarantino, you watch out, because you're in for a surprise, quote-unquote surprise, before the film's premiere. Now, when I read it, it sounds like a threat. I hope it isn't. I'm sure it isn't. I don't know what these people have in mind. But we're not going to resolve the problem between the citizenry and police departments today unless the police recognize in the first instance that some of their members, a lot of their members, are overstepping the bounds of propriety. It's very simple. And am I blaming the police? I do blame the police in most of these cases. They should know, they should be trained on how to handle these situations. And we see from these films, God bless the video now, what has gone on and what is wrong in these cases. Moving on here, want to talk about Donald Trump. And H.L. Mencken. I thought at the beginning of this campaign that Trump was a buffoon and a fool. Then I thought he was a buffoon and a fool only occasionally. And then I came 2 or 3 weeks ago, I said, this man may have something. He may be seeing things correctly. It worries me, though, that he can make a statement, he can make a charge, he can make an allegation. He doesn't have anything to back it up. Which doesn't make sense to me. So now I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, but I don't know whether he's a buffoon or a fool. He's still in that class, but coming out of it. But we have to see, because I don't know, and I don't think many of the people in this country know, although they support him dramatically. And why wouldn't they? He's going to do this and he's going to do that. He's going to solve all our problems. I don't know how he can do it all the way he says. He doesn't tell us how. He tells us he's going to do it. Be that as it may, okay? Mencken is H.L. Mencken, famous American writer, okay? He was big in the first half of the 20th century, very popular writer. You remember the Scopes trial, the monkey trial? He wrote about that as it was a monkey trial. He's the one who referred to it as a monkey trial, the Scopes trial, about the Bible and all that sort of stuff. Well, he wrote a statement on July 26, 1920, July 26, 1920, that I would like to read to you. And in my mind, I think today, if it was today, it refers to Donald Trump. I quote, "As democracy is perfected, the office of the president represents more and more closely the soul of the people, the inner soul of the people. On some great and glorious day, the folks of the land will search their heart's desire at last, and the White House will be occupied by a downright fool and complete narcissistic moron." End of quote. How's that? That's pretty good, isn't it? Some may say it fits Obama. I say it fits Donald Trump. He is foolish. He is narcissistic. He's not a moron, though. He obviously is a smart businessman. Whether that extends into running a country, I don't know. I write a weekly column in a local newspaper here, Conk Life, Konk. It's a weekly, and it goes from here to Homestead. It goes right up the Keys. And I wrote this week, I can write about anything I want, which is a wonderful thing in life, by the way. As you get older, You say what you think, and now I have the opportunity to tell the whole world what I think between this show, my blog, and this weekly newspaper column. This week I wrote about, I want to give you a little heads up on what I wrote about, Dracula in the operating room. Dracula in the operating room. Has nothing to do with medicine, has nothing to do with hospitals and doctors. It has to do with the college student loan program. College student loan program. Dracula is the United States government. The operating room is the college student loan program. My point in the article is the government is sucking up a lot of money out of this program that the government is putting in its own pocket. The money should go to reduce the obligations of the students. Now, here's what's going on. College is expensive today. We all know it. A private college costs between $50,000 and $60,000 a year. Room, board, and tuition. My God, that's more than a lot of people make. I remember, and maybe still, I don't know, you could buy a great house for that kind of money once. And college is also public institutions, state universities, Florida State, for example. That's much cheaper. A public institution is much cheaper because the state is helping out with paying for this thing. And you can get a 4-year degree in a public college, university, for $20,000 to $35,000. Now, the cost of a college education has come to this point over a period of 30 years. It has grown to these numbers. The most student loans, because today kids can go, it's terrible. They borrow $25,000, $80,000, $150,000, $180,000. They graduate owing this money, and if they get a professional degree, it's up there in the $150,000, $180,000. I know. I ran a law firm, and all of a sudden these graduates are coming in, and they're saying, "Mr. Patrone, what about my student loan?" And at first I used to say, "What do you mean, what about your student loan?" "Well, you got to help me. I can't pay it." And I realized that all of a sudden the firm had to help reduce their student loan every year. It was like a bonus. Oh, we couldn't hire anybody because everybody was doing it now. The young graduates demanded it, and we did it. And it was a burden, but we tried to help them. It's almost impossible to pay these debts off unless you have something like that going. And it happens because money's tight in the last 30 years that the public colleges and universities, 80% of the debt comes from students who go to the public universities, 80% of them. They go to the cheaper school and they borrow money through government's assistance for it. The debt amount today, the college student loan debt is $1.1 trillion. Now, China is our second biggest creditor, and we owe China $1.3 trillion, which everyone thinks is a lot of money, and it is. And the debt by everyone to the student loan program is $1.1 trillion. This is big business. This is big money. Let me put this $1.1 trillion in another way. It is larger, that number is larger than all the credit card debt in the United States. Isn't that amazing? Larger than all the credit card debt in the United States. It recently was discovered. I mean, we've had the student loan program since 1984, 1987. Recently discovered, recently meaning the last month or two, that our government, the United States government, who serves sort of as an intermediary here between the banks and the students, was getting a piece of the action. On any monies that were paid in, the government gets a piece of the action. They get a fee on any monies recovered. Now you say, oh, well, how much can it be? Well, I'll tell you how much it is. In the last 2 years, it's been $40 billion plus each year. $40 billion plus each year. It is estimated that in this fiscal year, when it ends, this is going to be the biggest year. They will have garnered in profit for themselves, free of charge, $51 billion. Now, look at those numbers, 40 billion plus. The two most profitable corporations in the world in the last 2 years were ExxonMobil, $44.9 billion, and Apple, $41.7 billion. The government's in the ball game with the two biggest profit makers in the world. Now you can really appreciate how much money is involved and how much money the government has been grabbing. I think it's wrong. I think if there is that kind of profit, it should be used to reduce the college debt obligation of the student. It's not for the government to make this kind of money. That's my point. And where does this money go? Well, very simple. It goes into a fund labeled College Student Loan Fund, and the government takes it from there and transfers it to the general fund of the United States and pays everyday bills of the United States out of that money. Again, I say it's wrong for the government to get a piece of the action, to use it that way. The money, if any, should go to reduce the obligation of the students involved. Okay, we're going to talk about the Catholic Church now. And I'm probably going to keep talking about the Catholic Church. I'm a fallen away Catholic. I fell away way back when, and I'm not proud of it. I'm not ashamed of it. Fact of life. But the Catholic Church is in turmoil now. It's in transition, hopefully. Pope Francis is trying to do things, and the bishops are fighting him like hell. And I've suddenly come to the conclusion that the Catholic Church is much like the Congress of the United States. They don't, the bishops who are the Congress for the Catholic Church don't get along with Obama, the president. They don't get along with the Pope. Pope Francis, he wants to make changes, no question about it, to reform the church, to make it more inclusive. Catholic churches are empty today. The ones that are still there, they've closed so many of them. Two of my churches in my hometown of Utica, New York, where I spent 70 years of my life, 71 to be exact, are closed down today. If I was going to church, I had to go to a third church. Excuse me. Because people weren't going, they were not able to keep them going. Now, the bishops are the Congress, as I said, and they recently have had two meetings the last 2 years that are called synods, SYNODS, and it's obvious. They're fighting the Pope like hell. They don't agree with the changes. And it's interesting, too, because the Catholic bishops, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, are very much opposed to what the Pope wants to do, whereas the German Conference of Bishops, they support him. So there's a difference of opinion here, apparently legitimately. What bothers me, this is the same United States Conference of Bishops that about 5 or 6 years ago joined with the religious right in this country, and anything the religious right is against, the bishops are against. I happen to be of the opinion that a priest belongs in church, and if he wants to say anything, he wants to exercise his opinion, do it from the pulpit, period, and let it be. Don't issue public statements. Don't go to Washington. Don't have this kind of a conference or that kind of a conference. Be that as it may, this past week, 2 financial books were stolen from the Vatican. They were dollar and cent books, bookkeeping books, records, and they were given to the press. Pope's trying to find out who right now. Because there is corruption in the Vatican Bank. Everyone knows this. They've had corruption in the Vatican Bank forever, and he has been exposing it in the 3 years he has been in office. What is in those books has already been revealed. It's been made public, but they took the books, whoever took them, gave them to the press and said, look what he's trying to hide. This sounds like a Republican-Democratic thing. So Francis says, again, they stole the books. He says, the people are aware, I am aware what's involved here. I've already taken steps, and he has in the last 3 years, if you follow this as I do. He's looking into financial misdeeds. He has fired priests, bishops, monsignors from their jobs, et cetera, et cetera. And he says, nobody's going to deter me from what I am trying to do. I am going to clean up the problem of financial irregularities, and the other changes I want will proceed. Now the bishops, and they have been for the last year or so, they're saying what he wants to do, not just with the financial part, but with who can go to communion, who can go to church, who can do what, is heresy. Heresy. People got burned at the stake by church people in the Middle Ages for heresy, okay? It's heresy, especially the U.S. Organization of Catholic Bishops. They say it's heresy. Now, what I ask is, why did they elect Francis in the first place, the Cardinals? Because the Cardinals are part of all this also. They thought he wasn't even in the running. Nobody was talking about him becoming Pope. All of a sudden, the Cardinals anoint him. They must have seen God in him and thought he could do something. He was going to walk the path a different way. They shouldn't have elected him. They should have known he was this kind of a person. All right? This is interesting about the books. I want to share to you what I think is an amusing story. You may or may not. It's 1978. The Pope is John Paul I. John Paul I. He had been in office. He had been a Pope for 33 days. I'm not proud of this again, but this is my life. I had not gone to church for 20 years. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law had a baby. They asked me to be godfather. I said yes. So I went to church that Sunday. It was a Sunday. I went to church, and I was godfather to one of their daughters. Later in the day, family party, backyard, cookout, about 30 family members there. All right, and all of a sudden, we learned that the Pope, John Paul, died. John Paul died that day. He's only in office 33 days. They found him dead in bed. I sat up in the lounge chair I was sitting in, and I said, oh, my God, I went to church, and the Pope died. Everyone laughed. But John Paul, there is a school of thought and something I believe that he was done in. He was killed somehow, okay, and there are books written on this, because he was into the Vatican Bank. Some priests are crooks. This is what I want to tell you. You know, some priests are pedophiles, so it makes sense some priests could be crooks. And they did away with John Paul, and now Francis is trying to do the same thing he did. The Vatican Bank's involved. The actual Italian bank is the Banco Ambrosiano. I don't pronounce it correctly, maybe. The Vatican owns a large number of shares in that bank. Watch this story and see how it goes. I'm going to talk quickly about Monsanto, Roundup, their pesticide, and glyphosate. I'm going to go quickly because I'm running out of time. We're in California. Glyphosate is used to kill pesticides in the farm areas. Now, California is big for growing everything, so it makes sense they would use a pesticide, which they shouldn't, because it's been acknowledged and shown that glyphosate, which is in Roundup, is a cancer-causing substance, okay? And several groups got together, several groups who don't like this glyphosate, Scientists, Center for Biological Diversity, California Pesticide Reform Organization, et cetera, and they issued a report. And they said more than half of the glyphosate sites are in the 8 poorest counties, are used in the 8 poorest counties in California, the counties where the Hispanic and Latino people live. 91% of the children in those counties are more likely than the white kids, because you don't have that many white kids in these 8 counties, to come down with problems from glyphosate. I'm not going to get into the other 2 items with you because they're telling me that I am close to being done. I thank you for joining me this week. I enjoy speaking with you. I hope you enjoy listening to me pontificate as I have tonight. I do not wish to be offensive, but I enjoy sharing my opinion. I'll be back next week. This show is archived. Most of you are going to be listening to it as it is archived on Black Talk Radio, YouTube, and you are aware it's linked to my Key West Lou website. Thank you again for joining me. I look forward to being with you next week.